Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, I'm here today to talk about a character that I know a lot of you are excited about. Kariyan has been hotly anticipated since I showcased him a few months ago, and for good reasons. The Custodes Blade Champion is the linchpin to a new meta team, and today I'm going to dive into that team, discuss what makes it good, and give you some insights and gameplay to make sure your raid attacks are successful. At time of recording, players are probably familiar by now with the 3 core raid teams in the game. I'd like to use this opportunity to add another team to the mix. You've probably seen me using these guys in my last couple of videos: Kariyan, Ragnar, Dante, Khaine, and Trajann. It's a legendary heavy team, but the results are undeniable. It's really strong and I think distinct from the multi-hit team. I'm calling this team the Custodes Team because they revolve around Kariyan and Trajann more than the other characters. Let's take a look at some nice synergies between the team before we dive into why Kariyan is the linchpin and glue that ties them together. Perhaps the most obvious is around Ragnar. All of the characters in this team are melee damage dealers, and Warhowl is probably the single most powerful skill in the game. It remains incredibly powerful despite the nerfs, and I don't think you can build a melee team without Ragnar. Dante has 3 uses in this team. Obviously the 3 main damage dealers here, Khaine, Ragnar, and Kariyan, are all rapid assault characters, so there's a nice damage boost to take advantage of in his passive. Probably more than that, his passive gives your characters a bonus hit on melee attacks when they are below 50% health. This is really relevant when we look at Kariyan's math later on. Dante's active works on bosses and reduces damage from their modifiable abilities and attacks, which will be relevant when we are trying to keep our character's health in a sweet spot for the gameplay section. The last piece of the puzzle here is Trajann. His passive gives your characters a nice chunk of bonus damage, and his ability is one of the highest damage buffers in the game. I've had some people message me to explain his passive. Trajann's passive is a battlefield-wide effect. Essentially, it has 2 checks. First is the target next to a character that has used its active this turn. If the answer is yes, that enemy unit takes bonus damage. If this criteria is satisfied, then we go on to the second check. The second check asks if the target is adjacent to Trajann. If yes, then that unit takes 2 bonus hits from the first non-normal attack a character makes. We can put that into context using Khaine as an example. Khaine has a passive that triggers an attack that is based on ability damage, not normal damage or stats. So let's assume that Trajann has gone next to the target and used his active. Khaine's normal attack will get 1096 bonus damage per hit. Khaine's passive attack also gets that 1096 bonus damage, but also gains 2 additional hits. Kariyan's passive is also a non-normal attack, which make the 2 well suited to use alongside Trajann. Using Kariyan's active means that his passive benefits from the bonus damage and hits, so the character works by himself, if you understand that phrasing. Okay, so as I've been mentioning, Kariyan's abilities are what makes him so good and the best character on this team. His active gives him a chunk of damage, but the text that makes this so relevant is that he gains 33% bonus damage for each turn in which Kariyan has performed an attack this battle. When you use this active on turn 6, you're basically gaining an additional 165% bonus damage for that active attack as well as the passive. Because Trajann's passive gives bonus hits to the first non-normal attack that a character does, you ideally want this to trigger on Kariyan's passive, not his active. Simply put, you want the extra hits on the ability that does more damage, which is the passive. Let's work through some math so I can explain what I mean. For the active ability, we add on Dante's passive damage, run it through Damvar, and then we add 165% bonus damage because of the active ability text. We then multiply that number by 50% for high ground and a further 20% for the Beast Slayer trait. 57,500 damage is an impressive total, but things really start to get more exciting when we include the passive. For this, we also get Trajann's passive benefit, and the math is calculated on screen for an impressive 137,000 damage. Totaling that alongside the active damage, we have a single character doing almost 200,000 damage in a single turn. Obviously this is with max settings, but it gives you some context when we look at the gameplay shortly. In this first clip, we look at Belisarius' Cawl at Legendary 2 with both side bosses down. I'll point out some tactics and strategy as we go. We position our units forward, kill some spawns, and here's where I want to point out the first tip. We know that the boss spawns tend to move before the boss himself. I take that into account here, and by using this initial positioning and setup, I know that my characters will be attacked in melee, and therefore there is no room for Cawl to take this high ground position. It's a small thing, but denying Cawl the high ground on turn 1 is crucial, because it means that I get to keep him on low ground for the rest of the fight, and therefore get a 50% damage boost effectively for the rest of the battle. Turn 2 is our Warhowl turn. Nothing too exciting. We get Ragnar into high ground and deal a ton of damage to him, being mindful of Dante's position to give maximal coverage with his bonus passive damage. Turn 3 is the next tactic or tip. You might be wondering why I leave characters in Cawl's beam. This is an intentional decision because I want Kariyan to eventually be below 50% health, so we get the bonus hit from Dante's passive. Dante secures the high ground here just to make sure that we can keep Cawl on the low ground for the remaining turns. Turn 4 is nothing spectacular. We now use Dante's active to give our team bonus damage and kind of have Cawl pinned in the top of the map. Once more, I use Trajann to secure the high ground. I'm not sure it's entirely necessary, but better safe than sorry. I'll pause for a second here just to appreciate the damage total increase on that last turn based on the Kariyan math we did earlier. A Legendary 2 Cawl has slightly higher armor than a Legendary 1 Ghazghkull, but you can still see here that I do almost 200,000 damage with Kariyan on this turn. I think this replay ends up at around 915,000 or so. I have another replay running here on screen with the same boss and the same opening, just to demonstrate that this isn't luck. Hopefully players will know by now that Cawl will always open with one of his 3 abilities. His movement and behavior can be copied based on the opening that he does. In this replay he starts with his beam, which we are thankful for because it means our characters can eat that damage and gain some nice bonus hits for the rest of the fight. Clearly this kind of strategy is going to vary depending on your roster. These are Diamond 3 characters against a Legendary 2 Cawl, so you might not be able to tank these beams unless you use Dante's active beforehand or your characters are sufficiently geared. Once more, the score is fairly similar to the previous run, because this team is consistent and adaptable as long as you keep those core principles in mind. Try and find out how you can gain high ground and keep your characters there for as long as possible, a lesson that goes beyond this raid team and boss fight. The Avatar fight teaches us no new lessons, but we get to reiterate those core gameplay loops with this team. This is a Legendary 3 Avatar map with the side bosses down. On turn 1 we kill the 2 warlocks and remind ourselves that the Avatar's first turn action is either a sweep or a strike, depending on which ability catches more of our units. The setup here means that the Avatar will use sweep, which is perfect because it allows us on turn 2 to take the high ground with our units. Similar gameplay strategy to last fight, where we are purposely leaving Kariyan on the low ground fire to take some extra damage which will give us bonus hits for later parts of the fight. The Dreadnought is the machine of war that I've chosen for this fight. Its immovable nature is crucial for this team and this boss battle in order to keep the Avatar roughly in position and next to a high ground hex for the rest of the battle. There's a bit of dancing around here, but this fight gives us another reason why I love Dante so much. His flying and movement speed of 4 lets him reposition easily around the map and continue to provide buffs to our damage dealing characters. These runs that I'm showing aren't perfect, but they give you an idea that Kariyan and his team, the Custodes team, are the real deal. I have one more replay, which is against the Riptide battlesuit. I've reused my clip from the Riptide showcase in case you missed that one, but this is at a Legendary 3 difficulty, and once more the Custodes team puts up really impressive numbers. Certainly against this boss, the Custodes team outperformed both the mech team and the Psyker team by a significant margin. I'll leave this replay on screen for a while in case it's helpful for people. Having shown how the team plays out, I thought I would do some theory crafting about where the team might shine. I've highlighted my thoughts on screen. I think this team will be best in slot or close to it for bosses like Ghazghkull, Avatar of Khaine, Belisarius Cawl, and the Riptide. I could see the team being good against Magnus as well, but it's probably a map dependent thing. My worry for the Magnus fight is that Gaze of Magnus is pretty good at killing your characters off, and when one or more of your characters in this team dies, the damage drops off quite a bit. Atlakoya might be part of the team since her passive helps negate that Gaze of Magnus damage. This team will probably be fine against things like the Rogel Dorn, Sarek, Screamer Killer, and the original Tyranids, but not as good as the mech team is against those bosses. The one place I think this team has no chance is against Mortarion, due to the anti-melee nature of that boss. Since we're talking about the team, I might as well do a bit of a look at where you need to invest and spend your badges. I've split these recommendations into 3 tiers: necessary, good, and okay. In the first group, I would put Ragnar's Warhowl, Kariyan's passive, and Trajann's passive. These 3 form the biggest chunk of damage on the team, and I would prioritize investment here. In the next tier down, Dante's passive is nice for the bonus hit and damage. Kariyan's active needs some investment to get to that extra 165% bonus damage, and I would probably add in Karn's passive since that triggers every turn. In the OK category, and I guess to be clear, if you really want to push this team, you probably want to tick all of these skills off. I would put Karn's active, Ragnar's passive, and Dante's active. I hope that was useful and gives you some insight as you build up Kariyan, who has quickly turned into my favourite character in the game. One last thing before I leave, this team does have one strike against it in the medium term, which is that most players will not be able to get Kariyan to Mythic for many months. I don't know where he will be farmable, so most people will be relying on Onslaught to be getting him up rarities. I still think the team is worth investing, and even if you're not at the very end game, this is probably the best variant of the melee team that you should be building, probably over the Ragnar variants with the Orcs and the Dark Angels. As I sign off, a big shout out and thank you to my Patreons as always for their support. Bye for now.